The carriage is already late when Hogwarts first appears. Night has settled over the towers, the feast is nearly finished, and hundreds of students have begun another school year without you. Somewhere inside the castle, candles float above long tables and portraits turn in their frames, while outside, an unfamiliar fifth year approaches through the dark, with a borrowed wand and a secret no ordinary lesson can explain. It is a fitting beginning for Hogwarts Legacy, a game built around entering a place that seems to have existed forever, and discovering that even an ancient castle can still make room for one more story. Tonight, we are going to take that arrival slowly. We will wander from the carriage to the Great Hall, through common rooms, classrooms, hidden passages, Hogsmeade shops, ruined towers, moonlit beast dens, and the quiet southern coast. Along the way, 200 facts will unfold in their natural places, each one connected to the world around it, rather than separated into a numbered list. There is nothing to memorize and no puzzle that needs solving before morning. If these long walks through game worlds help the day grow quieter, you can leave a like or subscribe before we reach the castle doors. Then let the noise outside the room fade for a while. The path ahead is lit, the flue flames are warm, and Hogwarts has been waiting since the 1890s. Hogwarts Legacy was developed by Avalanche Software and published by Warner Bros. Games under the Portkey Games label. This is the Utah-based Avalanche that previously worked on series such as Disney Infinity, rather than Avalanche Studios, the Swedish developer behind Just Cause. The shared name still causes confusion. Portkey Games is not a single development studio in the usual sense. It is Warner Bros. Label for games set in the wizarding world. That arrangement allowed Avalanche to build its own school year story while working inside established magical lore. The game is an original adventure rather than a playable adaptation of any Harry Potter novel or film. Its official FAQ also states that J.K. Rowling did not create the story or participate directly in the game's development, though her writing remains the foundation of the wider setting, and the developers collaborated with her team on continuity. That distinction explains why familiar rules, creatures, spells, and family names appear without forcing the plot to follow a book whose ending is already known. The story takes place in the 1890s, roughly a century before Harry, Ron, and Hermione attend Hogwarts. Newspapers and dated details place the school year around 1890 and 1891, when Queen Victoria was still on the British throne, and many conveniences of the 20th century wizarding world had not yet appeared. Choosing this period gave the artists room for heavier Victorian clothing, older shop signs, candlelight, brass instruments, handwritten notices, and a Hogwarts that feels recognizable without looking frozen in the 1990s. The protagonist does not begin as an 11-year-old first year. They arrive as a fifth-year student, unusually late and with years of magical education to recover. The reason for that delayed admission is never reduced to a simple family secret. What matters is that the student has only recently awakened to an ability connected with ancient magic. Starting late also solves a practical storytelling problem. A 15-year-old can learn advanced spells, leave the grounds, and face danger more plausibly than a child in the first weeks of school. Professor Matilda Weasley gives the new student a special Wizard's Field Guide, created with help from the Ministry of Magic. It functions as a textbook, map, challenge record, collection book, and explanation for experience points. Discovering pages and completing practical tasks helps the protagonist catch up academically. The menus therefore belong loosely to the story. When a page rises from a statue or painting, the student is not merely collecting an icon. The enchanted book is recording another piece of the education they missed. Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley cannot appear because none of them has been born. The game resists using time travel to change that. Instead, recognition comes through places and older figures: Nearly Headless Nick, Peeves, the Fat Lady, the Sorting Hat, and Professor Binns have already been at Hogwarts for a very long time. Their presence makes the castle feel continuous, while the absence of the famous trio gives new students and professors enough space to become more than substitutes. Albus Dumbledore is alive during the story, but he is still a child and has not yet begun at Hogwarts. Established chronology places his birth in 1881 and his first school year in 1892, shortly after the period shown in the game. This is why no young Dumbledore wanders through the corridors as an easy cameo. The choice keeps Hogwarts Legacy just beyond his shadow, close enough that his generation is approaching, but early enough for Headmaster Black and Professor Weasley to own the school year. Hogwarts Legacy was publicly announced during a PlayStation 5 showcase in September 2020. It was originally expected in 2021, then delayed, and eventually released in 2023. The long period between announcement and arrival led to years of frame-by-frame trailer study, especially around common rooms, moving staircases, spells, and possible companions. By launch, many people had already imagined their student in extraordinary detail. The finished game had to compete not only with earlier adaptations, but with private versions of Hogwarts built during the wait. The release happened in stages. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and Windows received the game on February 10, 2023. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One followed on May 5th, while Nintendo Switch arrived on November 14. The later versions required substantial technical adjustment, particularly the Switch edition, which divides some open areas with loading transitions. Even so, the same central story, castle, quests, and house choices, survived across hardware far less powerful than the machines targeted first. It is a single-player game with no cooperative or competitive mode. The official FAQ also confirms that there are no microtransactions. A separate Dark Arts pack was sold with deluxe editions or as an add-on, but the adventure contains no recurring currency store asking for payment between classes. This matters to the pace. Hogwarts can be explored alone, paused at any doorway, and revisited without other students racing through the corridor under human control. The school feels populated, but the journey remains private. Before a house has been chosen, or a wand has found its owner, those development decisions have already shaped the mood. The century creates distance from a familiar story. The single-player structure creates solitude inside a crowded school. The delayed fifth-year arrival creates the sense of having missed something, even when no earlier school years exist to remember. Hogwarts is introduced as home and mystery at the same time. The protagonist belongs there by invitation, yet every other student understands routines that they have not learned. That slight imbalance follows the first hours. Staircases move before their logic is clear. Classmates speak with old familiarity, and professors assign months of recovery as though catching up was simply another subject. Character creation separates appearance, voice, dormitory, and form of address more freely than older games in the setting. Faces begin from presets and can be adjusted through complexion, hair, scars, eyebrows, and other details. The two voiced performances can also be shifted in pitch. The student may choose a witch or wizard dormitory independently of much of their appearance. None of these decisions changes magical strength, so a face or voice is an identity rather than a hidden character class. The Sorting Hat asks a short question and suggests a house, but its answer is not final. Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, or Slytherin, can be chosen directly before the ceremony ends. There is no test designed to trap someone in an unwanted common room for an entire save. The moment keeps the pleasure of being considered by the hat, while acknowledging that many people arrived with a house already in mind. The choice changes colours, common room access, a story route involving Richard Jackdaw, and scattered lines of dialogue. A Warner Bros. Games account can be linked with a Harry Potter fan club profile. Doing so can import the result of the official sorting experience and wand ceremony, though the player may still choose differently. Linking also unlocks a beaked skull mask and house-themed fanatic robes. It is a small bridge between the website identity some fans had carried for years and the new student inside the game. The imported answers are a welcome, not a binding contract. The protagonist receives a temporary wand before visiting Ollivanders in Hogsmeade. At the shop, wand wood, length, flexibility, style, colour and core can be selected. Dragon heartstring, unicorn hair and phoenix feather are the available cores, following the familiar British wand tradition. These details do not alter damage or spell cooldowns. The wand is personal in description and appearance, while magical growth comes from spells, talents, gear, and practice, rather than discovering a mathematically superior piece of wood. The opening carriage contains a visual clue that only becomes understandable after disaster. George Osric is visible beside Professor Fig, but the creatures pulling the carriage appear absent. When a dragon attacks and kills George, the protagonist witnesses death for the first time. Thestrals suddenly become visible in the harness. The scene uses an old rule of the wizarding world as quiet storytelling. Thestrals were present all along, and the student's perception changed in the instant that death became real. George carries a small metal container sent by Professor Fig's wife, Miriam. The strange key inside awakens when the protagonist touches it and becomes a port key, transporting Fig and the student to ruined cliffs far from the shattered carriage. Port keys usually disguise themselves as objects nobody would bother picking up. This one is unusual because it is both a key and a means of travel, leading not to a public destination but to a forgotten entrance built around ancient magic. The port key ultimately brings the pair into Gringotts, where they descend to Vault 12. The bank appears only during the opening, yet its minecart tracks, goblin staff, underground water, and monumental stone give the story a scale beyond Hogwarts before school even begins. Vault 12 is entered with the mysterious key and lies deeper than an ordinary family vault. Its defenses respond to ancient magic, suggesting that Miriam's research had reached a secret guarded for centuries. Ranrock is introduced inside Gringotts rather than at a distant villain's meeting. He is already searching for the same power and arrives furious that a goblin banker has allowed the humans into the vault. His conflict is rooted in resentment toward wizarding control, but his methods quickly become violent and authoritarian. The rebellion he leads is not presented as every goblin's cause. Characters such as Lodgok, Arn, Garnuff, and the Gringotts employees make clear that goblins disagree with him and live varied lives. Ancient magic appears to the protagonist as luminous traces, often forming symbols, paths, or objects that other people cannot perceive. Professor Fig can follow the student's reactions but cannot see the glow himself. This ability is rare rather than entirely unique. Portraits of 4 former professors recognize it because Isidora Morganac once possessed the same sight. The mystery is therefore less about being the first chosen person and more about deciding what to do with a power that has already been used badly. Professor Eleazar Fig teaches magical theory, a subject mentioned more often than it is shown. His wife Miriam investigated the traces of ancient magic before dying, and his work with the protagonist continues her unfinished search. Fig is not the school-appointed mentor because of prophecy. He becomes involved through grief, curiosity, and responsibility for the portkey. His warmth carries a tired edge, as though every discovery is shared with someone absent. That private loss gives the main mystery a human beginning. The opening has now crossed several kinds of threshold. A carriage becomes a site of death. A key becomes a portkey. A bank vault becomes a classroom for magic nobody else can see. By the time Hogwarts finally rises ahead, the ordinary dream of attending school has already been complicated by secrets older than its professors. Yet the late arrival still restores a kind of calm. The Great Hall waits. The Sorting Hat considers one more mind. Fig steps back, and for a few hours the largest decision is where the new student will sleep. The castle receives a child carrying events that belong far below it, then answers with common room fires and introductions at breakfast. The dragon attack makes the protagonist late for the sorting ceremony. By the time Fig and the student reach the Great Hall, most of the feast is over, and Headmaster Phineas Nigellus Black is eager to end the evening. Starting after everyone else has settled, gives the first walk through a common room a peculiar calm. Beds are occupied, fires are low, and the school already has its rhythm. The new student enters not at the beginning of Hogwarts, but in the middle of a living night. House choice changes one early route to Richard Jackdaw and the Map Chamber. Gryffindors work with Nearly Headless Nick and the Headless Hunt. Slytherins follow clues left by the Black family's house elf, Scrope. Ravenclaws investigate a missing Ollivander wand in the Owlery. Hufflepuffs visit Azkaban with former Auror Helen Thistlewood. All four paths eventually reach Jackdaw's remains and the same larger mystery, but each reveals a different part of his short, careless life. Gryffindor Tower uses the Fat Lady's portrait as its entrance, long before Harry ever gives her a password. Inside, red fabric, carved wood, crowded pictures, fireplaces, and connected levels create a room that feels accumulated rather than designed all at once. The dormitories occupy the tower above. One staircase still refuses access according to dormitory choice, echoing the enchanted protections described in the books. The common room's warmth comes partly from its slight disorder, as if generations have kept leaving pieces of themselves behind. Hufflepuff's common room sits close to the kitchens and enters through large barrels. Rounded doors, low ceilings, copper fittings, yellow fabric, plants, and earth-toned wood make it resemble a comfortable burrow. It was especially anticipated because the original books never take Harry inside. The game therefore had fewer film images to imitate and more room to build from written description. Sunlight enters at ground level, leaves crowd the walls, and even the dormitory corridors seem shaped by roots rather than straight architecture. Ravenclaw's common room occupies one of the castle's highest towers. Blue fabric, pale stone, astronomical instruments, books, airy windows, and a starry ceiling connect it with the house element of air and its love of learning. Ravenclaw students receive a practical advantage that is easy to miss. They can reach a roof terrace from inside and land there by broom once flying is available. The private entrance makes the tower feel connected to the sky in a way the other common rooms cannot copy. Slytherin's common room is hidden behind a moving stone wall in the dungeons. Its long windows look into the Black Lake, casting green, wavering light across dark furniture and stone floors. Fish and drifting plants can be seen outside. Under certain conditions, the giant squid presses a tentacle against the glass. a detail that turns the room's underwater location from decoration into sudden presence. The entrance itself remains plain until it opens, protecting the house through concealment rather than a visible door. A student normally cannot enter the other 3 common rooms. Their entrances may be found, but the architecture refuses the wrong house. This makes 4 save files the intended way to see every dormitory and house chest. Players later discovered glitches and unusual routes into forbidden rooms, yet those are outside the designed experience. The restriction gives house choice a physical consequence. Somewhere in the same castle are bedrooms and fires that exist throughout the whole game, but remain unseen because the sorting hat said another name. The grand staircase is not a direct copy of the broad moving staircases from the films. In Hogwarts Legacy, segments curl into place as the student approaches, forming a tall spiral around portraits, landings, and the central tower. This lets the staircase move without creating an impossible navigation puzzle every few seconds. The result still feels temperamental. A clear path may not exist until someone walks toward it, as though the castle wants intention before it provides a route. The Hogwarts map divides the castle into 6 major wings: the Astronomy Wing, Bell Tower Wing, Grand Staircase, Great Hall, Library Annex, and South Wing. Each wing contains several flue flames and vertical layers that a flat map can only approximate. The division helps with travel, but the building is meant to be learned through landmarks. A rhinoceros skeleton, a fountain, a tapestry, or the sound of music often becomes more useful than remembering which floor number should contain a doorway. The Great Hall keeps the enchanted ceiling, floating candles, house tables, staff table, and tall windows familiar from earlier stories. Its decorations change as the year passes. Pumpkins and autumn leaves give way to winter greenery, and the final House Cup ceremony returns the room to its role as the school's communal heart. Students eat there outside major scenes, while owls sometimes cross overhead. The hall feels grandest when nothing important is happening, and breakfast simply continues beneath impossible weather. By then the castle has begun teaching through shape. Towers belong to air and distance. Dungeons hold water, stone, and things families prefer to conceal. The warmest common room sits near the kitchens, while Gryffindor's entrance turns a portrait into a guard. These arrangements are not presented as a formal lesson, but the body learns them. Down means colder corridors. Up means windows and astronomy. A wrong turn may end beside a tapestry, yet that tapestry soon becomes the landmark that makes the next journey easier. Hogwarts stops being a collection of famous rooms and becomes a route remembered through feet. The Hogwarts kitchens can be entered by tickling the pear in a fruit painting, exactly the kind of peculiar instruction that sounds like a school rumor until it works. The pear laughs, becomes a handle, and opens a hidden door near Hufflepuff's corridor. Inside, house elves prepare food beneath the Great Hall, with tables positioned in the same arrangement as those above. Meals can therefore be sent upward to corresponding places, turning the feast into the final stage of an unseen kitchen routine. House elves are visible working throughout the kitchens, rather than appearing only when a quest needs one. They chop, stir, carry, clean, and occasionally suffer small magical mishaps. Their labor makes the floating abundance upstairs less mysterious. Deek, Scrope, Penny, Finky, and other named elves also show how differently individual households and institutions treat them. The game does not resolve the larger injustice of their condition, but it rarely lets the castle's comfort appear ownerless. Someone is always maintaining the magic. The hospital wing occupies a bright upper section of the castle near the faculty tower. Beds stand behind screens, while the school nurse moves among students who have learned, once again, that magic can go wrong. Reaching it casually requires Alohomora because the easiest route passes through a locked faculty area. The location is also part of Gladwin Moon's first demiguise search. Sneaking past professors to steal a moon statue beside sleeping patients makes an ordinary schoolroom feel briefly forbidden. The library includes open study areas, towering shelves, a librarian who watches the room, and a restricted section beneath the main floor. Sebastian helps the protagonist sneak inside using the disillusionment charm. Ghosts patrol the lower passages, and traces of ancient magic lead toward a hidden Athenaeum. The sequence turns a familiar school rule into the entrance to something far older. A forbidden shelf is only the first layer. Beneath it waits a stone chamber that the librarian herself may never have seen. The astronomy tower is one of the highest reachable points at Hogwarts. Its classroom opens toward a large telescope, and the stairs continue through exposed night air. Amit Thakar introduces the protagonist to astronomy there after giving away his spare telescope. The activity cannot be completed in daylight, so the sky itself becomes a timetable. Constellations are aligned by rotating and resizing a pattern until the stars settle into the shape engraved on the table. The clock tower contains one of the 3 official Hogwarts secrets. A huge pendulum swings behind 4 symbols, and Arresto Momentum or Glacius can hold it in place when its shadow reaches the matching mark. Doors on different levels then open to hidden rooms and rewards. The puzzle turns the castle's machinery into a key. Time is not merely shown by the clock. It must be stopped with magic, long enough for stone doors to remember that they can move. Hogwarts has a boathouse at the edge of the Black Lake, connected to the castle by a long stairway. The game begins too late for the traditional first-year boat crossing, but the route can still be walked in reverse. From the waterline, the school looks heavier and more remote than it does from a broom. The giant squid occasionally breaks the lake's surface nearby, while small docks and tide boats suggest that arrival by water remains part of school life, even when the protagonist reaches the Great Hall another way. The Quidditch pitch is fully modelled, but Quidditch cannot be played. Headmaster Black announces that the season has been cancelled because of an injury in the previous year's final, a decision students loudly resent and teachers do little to defend. The explanation is built into the school rather than left to a menu note. Brooms still circle the towers and take part in races, so the missing sport is visible as an empty purpose. Hoops stand ready above a field that never receives a match. The landscape changes through autumn, winter, and spring as the main story advances. Leaves turn, pumpkins appear, snow covers roofs and roads, holiday decorations enter the Great Hall, and later the Highlands soften again. Seasons cannot be changed freely from a menu because they belong to story progress. A completed game remains in its final season. This gives each chapter a weathered identity, though it also means that a favourite snowy Hogwarts survives only in the middle of a save. Day and night can be changed by weighting from the map, but the shift affects more than lighting. Demiguise statues can be collected only at night, astronomy tables require darkness, and certain quests ask for a particular hour. Students thin out after evening, candles become more noticeable, and windows stop competing with the interior glow. The game does not impose a curfew during ordinary exploration. After the early stealth missions, a 5th year can wander the castle at 3 in the morning without losing house points. Morning returns the school to work. Doors open onto classrooms that treat danger with the cheerfulness of an established curriculum. Children summon objects, duel beside breakable furniture, carry screaming roots, and ride broomsticks over courtyards, without anyone questioning whether magic itself is too risky. The concern is technique. A reckless potion is dangerous. Potion making is not. A poorly timed spell can injure someone. The answer is another lesson. This attitude gives Hogwarts its peculiar comfort. Wonder has been organized into subjects, shelves, assignments, and teachers who have survived enough mistakes to recognize the sound of the next one beginning. Professor Matilda Weasley is deputy headmistress as well as the Transfiguration teacher. She previously worked as a curse breaker for the ministry and spent time abroad before returning to Hogwarts, which helps explain her practical manner with a student facing dangers outside ordinary coursework. Her surname connects her to the future Weasley family, without drawing a precise line to Arthur or Ron. She carries the familiar red hair, but her authority and history belong to her own century. Headmaster Phineas Nigellus Black is an ancestor of Sirius Black and is remembered in later lore as one of Hogwarts' least popular headmasters. The game allows that reputation to develop in person. He cancels Quidditch, dislikes interruptions, worries about appearances, and treats school administration as an inconvenience attached to his title. Yet his vanity is often comic rather than monstrous. His portrait will someday advise later headmasters, but in 1890, Simon Pegg's performance gives the painted complainer a living voice and body. Professor Dinah Hecat teaches defense against the dark arts and looks older than her actual years. Her appearance is connected to a mysterious incident during her former career as an unspeakable in the Department of Mysteries. Exposure to dangerous time magic aged her body, leaving a teacher whose experience is literally visible. She does not treat combat as theatrical dueling. Her first lesson uses Levioso to interrupt an attacking dummy, teaching that control and timing can matter more than raw force. Potions is taught by Professor Aesop Sharp, a former Auror whose career ended after an injury. He walks with a cane and has little patience for careless brewing. The classroom suits him: cool stone, measured ingredients, simmering cauldrons, and consequences for rushing. Sharp's assignment later requires the student to use several combat potions, rather than merely prepare them. His approach treats potion making as field discipline, something that kept people alive during investigations, and can still compensate for a body that no longer moves as it once did. Herbology professor Mirabelle Garlick grew up in a household of muggles, and found the magical world more welcoming than the home she left behind. Her classroom is warm, bright, and crowded with leaves. Though her manner is gentle, the subject includes plants capable of screaming, biting, poisoning, and fighting. Garlick's assignments turn that contradiction into practice. A plant can be nurtured carefully in a pot, then carried into a bandit camp and released as a weapon. Charms Professor Abraham Ronan turns lessons into games whenever he can. He first teaches Accio through Summoner's Court, where enchanted balls must be pulled across a scoring board without falling over the edge. Ronan is also an enthusiastic Gobstones player and reportedly met his wife through the game. His class shows that spell control can be learned through play. The same charm later used to drag an enemy from a ledge begins with students laughing on a lawn. Madame Chio Kogawa teaches flying after working for the Japanese Ministry of Magic. Professor Weasley met her during her own travels and later recruited her to Hogwarts. Kogawa values control, discipline, and respect for the broom, which puts her at odds with Everett Clopton's improvised detour during the first lesson. Her assignments send the protagonist popping balloons around the Highlands. The exercises look playful, but they train low turns, height changes, and sustained speed away from the safety of the pitch. Professor Mudiwa Onai teaches divination and came to Hogwarts from Ouagadougou, the African school her daughter Natsai previously attended. Ouagadougou is known for wandless magic, and Natty explains that a wand can feel like a useful instrument rather than an absolute requirement. Professor Onai accepted the Hogwarts post after the death of her husband. Her classroom is reached through a ladder that descends from the ceiling, making the act of attending divination feel like climbing into a room suspended between towers and clouds. Astronomy professor Satyavati Shah was raised in the Muggle world and approaches the stars with a demanding seriousness. She distrusts imprecise answers and does not share Amit's habit of romanticizing every constellation. Her presence adds a useful tension to magical astronomy. The sky is full of wonder, but observation still requires careful instruments, correct alignment, and cold nights on a tower. Magic has not removed the need to look closely. Professor Cuthbert Binns is already a ghost in the 1890s. He teaches history of magic in the same dry, droning manner later endured by Harry's generation, which means his death and return to the classroom happened even earlier. The protagonist can attend one of his lectures and quietly slip away to examine nearby field guide subjects. Binns barely changes tone. For a teacher who has personally crossed from life into death, he remains remarkably capable of making Goblin history feel distant. Together, the faculty feels less like a row of quest givers than a collection of lives interrupted by teaching. Sharp lost the field work his body could no longer perform. Hecate carries time visibly. Onan crossed continents after bereavement. Kogawa accepted a new country through Weasley's invitation, and Garlic found a home in the world her family could not share. Even Binns has made the ultimate career decision by continuing after death. Their histories rarely demand center stage. They appear in office details, assignment language, and the patience or impatience each professor brings to a late student who needs more from them than the syllabus planned. Beasts class is led by Professor Bai Howin, whose respect for magical creatures is more practical than sentimental. She teaches safe handling and recognizes their value to wizard kind, while Poppy Sweeting responds to them with far deeper affection. The first lesson introduces Puffskeins and Kneazles before Highwing arrives. That contrast quietly prepares Poppy's story. The school can teach proper care, but protecting creatures from exploitation requires someone willing to act beyond a syllabus. Classes are not arranged as a repeating daily timetable. Each major lesson is an authored story event that teaches a spell, tool, or relationship, and the protagonist is free to explore between them. This makes the school year less like a simulation and more like a sequence of remembered classes. No one demands attendance every Monday morning. A single charms lesson may stand for weeks of study, while assignments and conversations suggest that ordinary schoolwork continues outside the scenes we see. The first defense against the dark arts class ends with a duel against Sebastian Sallow. Levioso breaks the yellow shield surrounding him. Basic cast follows, and the room's furniture is put at risk almost immediately. Sebastian loses without resentment and invites the new student to crossed wands. Their friendship begins through curiosity about skill rather than a formal introduction. The duel also establishes the color language of combat. Yellow control spells break yellow shields, with purple and red categories soon joining them. Crossed Wands is a secret student dueling club, organized by Lucan Brattleby beneath the clock tower. Its secrecy is somewhat generous, since students throw bright spells inside a school building, and several professors seem aware of it. The rounds teach targeting, shield breaking, and fighting more than one opponent. A training dummy nearby allows spell combinations to be practiced without injury. The club makes combat feel like a school activity before the Highlands reveal how dangerous the same movements can become. Summoner's Court begins as part of Charms class and later becomes a chain of matches against students and professors. Accio pulls each ball toward the near edge, while raised obstacles and changing score zones make stopping at the right moment more important than maximum force. The final opponent is Professor Ronan himself. It is one of the few activities that remains entirely non-violent while still testing spell mastery, turning the lawn outside the castle into a quiet, magical sport. The first potions lesson asks the student to brew an Edurus potion, whose rocky protection can harden the skin during battle. Gareth Weasley then whispers a request for an extra ingredient so he can attempt an experiment. Helping him contributes to a spectacular cauldron mishap. Refusing him does not stop his interest in invention. Gareth's habit of ignoring measured recipes makes him a comic opposite to Professor Sharp, who knows that one careless substitution can fill a dungeon with smoke. In herbology, the protagonist repots a mandrake and learns why earmuffs are part of the equipment. The young plant's cry is unpleasant rather than fatal, but it still leaves the class shaken. Later, mandrakes can stun groups of enemies in the open world. The lesson compresses a strange agricultural life cycle into one memorable sound. A root pulled from soil, an angry infant shape, and a whole greenhouse briefly wishing it had remained buried. The first beast's lesson teaches grooming with a brush and feeding by hand. A puffskein receives care, a Kniezel reacts to an unkind student, and Poppy later introduces Highwing away from the crowd. Hippogriffs demand respect, so the protagonist bows and waits for Highwing to return the gesture. This small pause matters. Most powers in the game are learned by moving a wand. Trust with Highwing begins by lowering the head and doing nothing until the creature chooses to answer. Everett Clopton persuades the protagonist to leave the approved route during flying class. Their brief tour sweeps around the castle while Madame Kogawa calls them back. Everett is voiced by Luke Youngblood, who played Lee Jordan in the Harry Potter films. Both characters share an appetite for jokes and rule-breaking, though they live a century apart. The casting is a quiet link rather than a claim that the two are related. Many spells are learned through professor assignments completed outside class. The student may need to dodge attacks, use potions together, grow plants, pop balloons, practice against enemies, or find pages before a professor provides the next lesson. This system makes education practical and occasionally strange. A teacher can ask a fifth year to acquire troll bogies, and the school treats surviving the encounter as acceptable homework. Those assignments gradually loosen the boundary between school and world. A spell begins at a blackboard, is tested on a dummy, and then opens a ruined door miles from Hogwarts. A potion brewed for Professor Sharp becomes the thing that keeps the student standing in a mine. Balloon practice for Kogawa teaches the turns needed to escape a cliffside camp. Education is not left behind when the castle doors close. It changes the meaning of everything outside them. At the same time, the Highlands send their own lessons back into school, carried as scars, ingredients, pages, and questions no professor assigned. Beneath Hogwarts lies the map chamber, a vast circular room reached through Richard Jackdaw's tomb. A floor map spreads across its center, and enormous portraits of the keepers hang around it. Professor Fig can enter after the protagonist discovers the room, but the ancient trials respond only to the student who sees their magic. The chamber becomes a second classroom beneath the ordinary school, taught by people who died centuries earlier and still refuse to reveal everything at once. Richard Jackdaw is a headless ghost whose remains still hold pages torn from the book left by Miriam. He once stole from Peeves, flirted with more than one person, and followed clues into the Forbidden Forest, where an enchanted blade killed him before he understood what he had found. His missing head is not simply a visual joke. The fatal blow left his skeleton seated beside the route to the map chamber, turning a reckless school adventure into a warning preserved underground. The four keepers are Percival Rackham, Charles Rookwood, Neve Fitzgerald, and San Bakar. All were Hogwarts professors, and Fitzgerald also served as headmistress. Rackham shared the protagonist's ability to perceive ancient magic. Together, they used portraits, pensieves, trials, and secret chambers to protect knowledge of a repository beneath the school. They call themselves keepers because they guard both a power and a secret, though the story repeatedly asks whether keeping knowledge hidden is the same as using it wisely. Percival Rackham's trial begins beneath San Bakar's tower and moves through rooms transformed by ancient gateways. Passing through an arch changes which bridges, platforms, and walls exist. The puzzle asks the student to understand that two versions of the same room can overlap. Pensieve guardians then test combat before Rackham's memory is revealed. His trial is not an exam in school subjects. It trains the unusual sight that allows the protagonist to treat reality itself as something with another layer. Charles Rookwood's trial lies beneath his ruined castle, which has become a base for Victor Rookwood's Ashwinders and Ranrock's loyalists. The ancient chambers again use portals, but combat complicates the shifting space. Enemies and objects may exist on one side of an arch and not the other. The place connects two generations of the Rookwood name, a professor guarding magic below, while a later dark wizard occupies the broken estate above. Neve Fitzgerald's trial abandons the usual visual style and places the protagonist inside a storybook-like world drawn in black, white, and parchment tones. The student encounters versions of the three Deathly Hallows, an invisibility cloak for stealth, the Elder Wand for overwhelming combat, and a resurrection stone that leads toward Neve's memory. They are trial objects rather than the literal hallows carried out afterward. The sequence borrows a famous fable to test whether the student can move through death without possessing it. San Bakar refuses to offer his trial until the protagonist proves respect for a Graphorn known as the Lord of the Shore. The creature must first be fought, then approached with a choice to kneel or attack. Either response can lead to the mount accepting the student, but kneeling mirrors the courtesy once shown to Highwing. The Graphorn then breaks through the final stone barrier by force, making Bakar's trial less about solving an ancient room and more about earning passage beside another living being. Isadora Morganac grew up near Feldcroft during a period of drought. Percival Rackham used ancient magic to restore water and life to the land, and the young Isadora saw him perform what ordinary spells could not. She later attended Hogwarts, learned that she shared his rare perception, and eventually became a professor. Her beginning is shaped by gratitude. Ancient magic first appears to her as relief arriving after a family and village have suffered. Isadora's father never recovered emotionally after the death of her brother. Convinced that pain was an illness she could cure, Isadora drew grief out of him with ancient magic. His expression softened, but something essential seemed absent afterward. This is the moral center of her story. She does not begin by seeking conquest. She begins by wanting to help someone she loves, and refuses to accept that sorrow may have to be lived through rather than removed. The repositories used to contain extracted emotion were built by a goblin metalworker named Bragbor. Goblin silver and goblin craftsmanship could hold forms of magic the professors could not safely manage alone. This creates a hidden debt beneath the Keeper's achievement. Wizard history remembers their portraits and trials, while Bragbor's descendants inherit records of labor performed for people who kept the final purpose secret. Ranrock later finds those records and reads the repositories as power stolen from goblin kind. At this point, the old story no longer divides cleanly between wise professors and a reckless student. Isadora sees suffering that caution cannot satisfy. Rackham sees a power whose consequences he cannot measure. Bragbor builds the vessels, yet his descendants are denied the whole account. Everyone understands one part and protects it as though it were the entire truth. The trials train strength and perception, but they do not teach conversation across that divide. Each pensieve gives the Keepers control over what the future witnesses, while Isadora has no portrait left to answer their version. The protagonist learns history from evidence arranged by its surviving judges. The Keepers object to Isadora's work because they do not understand the extracted magic and see that her father has been changed rather than healed. Rackham tries to stop her gently at first. Their disagreement is never given the patient examination it needs. Isadora believes caution is cowardice. The Keepers answer secrecy with greater secrecy. The protagonist inherits both failures, meeting portraits that demand obedience while chasing a woman who left only memories and traces of what she believed. Isadora eventually begins drawing emotion from students at Hogwarts. In her portrait chamber, traces of the stored power appear almost intoxicating, and one memory suggests that she has started inhaling or consuming some of it herself. The act crosses a line from consent within her family to authority used on pupils. Whatever compassion began the experiment has become certainty that she alone understands what others need. Ancient magic magnifies that certainty by giving immediate, visible results. The final pensieve memory shows the Keepers confronting Isadora. She attacks, and Sanbakar kills her with Avada Kedavra. The moment is startling because a future Keeper uses an unforgivable curse while condemning dangerous magic. The game does not dwell on legal consequences in that older era. Instead, the memory complicates Bakar's authority. The people guarding the repository are not untouched moral judges. They ended their crisis through the deadliest spell in wizarding lore. Bragbor kept journals describing the repositories, and Ranrock eventually discovered them. His metal gauntlets help him channel the unstable red power drawn from sites beneath the Highlands. The color distinguishes corrupted ancient magic from the softer blue traces seen by the protagonist. Ranrock's strength therefore comes from a mixture of inherited knowledge, goblin craft, and emotion stored by a witch centuries earlier. The rebellion's weapon was created through cooperation that later generations remembered as betrayal. Lodgok is Ranrock's younger brother, though he rejects the rebellion's violent direction. He first meets the protagonist at the Hog's Head, where Sirona Ryan's trust helps bridge a divide that Professor Fig initially handles poorly. Lodgok wants to reach the brother he remembers, not simply defeat a political enemy. His assistance demonstrates that goblin opposition to wizards is not one unified position. Family, trade, fear, and personal memory pull different goblins toward different choices. Lodgok asks for the Helm of Urtkot, a goblin-made relic buried in a witch's tomb, hoping the gift will earn Ranrock's attention. The tomb is filled with moth mechanisms, inferi, and old stone chambers, but the helm has already been taken by thieves when the protagonist reaches its resting place. Recovering it from an Ashwinder camp joins two enemy networks that otherwise distrust each other. Victor Rookwood's people and Ranrock's loyalists cooperate when ancient power offers enough profit. Lodgok later obtains Bragbor's final journal and tries to bring it to the protagonist. Ranrock intercepts him and reacts to the perceived betrayal with fatal violence. Only afterward does he realize that Lodgok had carried information of enormous value. The death closes the possibility that brotherly memory might temper the rebellion. It also leaves the protagonist holding knowledge bought through someone else's failed attempt at reconciliation, a pattern the Keeper's trials never prepared them to solve. Victor Rookwood leads the Ashwinders, a network of dark witches and wizards involved in extortion, theft, poaching, and violence across the Highlands. His surname links him to Keeper Charles Rookwood's family line, while the castle associated with Charles has become Victor's base. Victor presents himself as a business-like partner to Ranrock, but each expects to use the other. Their alliance holds only while both believe the repository can make them stronger. The curse tormenting Anne Sallow did not come from goblins, despite Sebastian's certainty. Victor Rookwood cast it when Anne witnessed activity she was not meant to see. His words during the confrontation reveal the truth. The children he blamed were an easy target for his fear and anger. Sebastian's mistake matters because prejudice directs his search from the beginning. He spends months hating an entire people while the wizard responsible works openly beside Ranrock. In the final repository, Ranrock absorbs the stored power and transforms into a vast dragon-like form surrounded by red magic. The battle destroys floating orbs that shield him before the protagonist can strike directly. Afterward, the student may declare an intention to keep the power contained or open it for personal use. The broad ending remains similar, but the choice defines the private thought carried from the chamber: stewardship, temptation, or confidence that this time dangerous power will obey a better person. The main story reaches its largest chamber there, but Hogwarts Legacy often becomes more intimate when it steps away from that scale. A repository can threaten the school without knowing any student's name. The companion stories know exactly who will be hurt. They unfold in homes, letters, family arguments, hidden rooms, and the pauses after somebody says the wrong thing. No ancient guardian arranges those choices into 4 formal trials. Friendship gives access, then leaves the protagonist responsible for what happens with it. Sebastian opens the Undercroft. Natty shares her father's memory. Poppy admits where she learned so much about cages. Their trust creates paths that the field guide never could. Professor Fig is mortally wounded during the collapse of the repository. If the student chooses containment, he helps seal the magic before dying and can share a final moment involving Miriam's wand. If the darker intention is chosen, his end comes without the same exchange. Hogwarts later holds a memorial in the Great Hall, where Professor Weasley speaks and the empty place among the faculty becomes visible. The main mystery ends not with triumph alone, but with the loss of the teacher who entered it for Miriam. The House Cup is a separate late quest that requires the protagonist to reach level 34. Returning to the Great Hall triggers a final celebration in which Professor Weasley awards last-minute points for extraordinary service, allowing the chosen house to win. The scene mirrors the end-of-year ceremonies familiar from the books, but the school still does not know every detail of what happened below it. Publicly, the student completed a remarkable year. Privately, they may now guard a repository almost nobody knows exists. Sebastian Sallow first appears as a gifted, confident Slytherin, willing to bend rules for knowledge. He has access to the Undercroft, a forgotten room beneath Hogwarts that ominous Gaunt showed him in trust. Sebastian teaches the protagonist Confringo there, and uses the chamber as a place where curiosity can escape adult supervision. What begins as friendship and private practice gradually turns the Undercroft into a witness. Each return finds the three students carrying a little more suspicion than before. Sebastian's twin sister, Anne, once attended Hogwarts, but now lives in Feldcroft under the care of their uncle Solomon. A curse causes sudden, severe pain that healers at St. Mungo's have been unable to remove. Anne has begun accepting that no cure may exist, while Sebastian treats acceptance as abandonment. Their difference is loving on both sides. She wants him to keep living. He hears that request as permission for everyone else to stop trying. Ominis Gaunt belongs to the same old pure-blood family that will eventually produce Marvolo, Merope, and Lord Voldemort. He was born blind, yet moves with the help of a wand that pulses red and guides him through the environment. Ominis can speak Parseltongue, and was raised by relatives who practiced the dark arts. Rather than continuing their beliefs, he rejects cruelty because he knows it intimately. The Gaunt in this story is often the person arguing for restraint. Salazar Slytherin built a hidden scriptorium beneath the castle, separate from the Chamber of Secrets. Ominis knows its entrance from family stories, but refuses to open it because his aunt Noctua disappeared while searching there. Her remains are eventually found beside a desperate note. She had discovered that the final door demanded Crucio and would not cast it on another person. The room preserved her refusal for years before Sebastian arrived looking for anything that might help Anne. Passing the scriptorium's last door requires someone to suffer the Cruciatus curse. The protagonist may learn and cast it on Sebastian, persuade Sebastian to cast it on them, or endure it without choosing to learn the incantation. No harmless puzzle solution exists. The door was designed to make cruelty a credential. Ominis's horror comes from childhood experience with the curse, while Sebastian's willingness marks how quickly a search for healing has begun accepting pain as a tool. The spellbook found inside points Sebastian toward a relic in a catacomb near Feldcroft. The object can command in theory, and Sebastian imagines that such power might somehow reverse Anne's curse. A warning plainly states that a dark sacrifice is involved, but urgency has changed the way he reads. Evidence against the relic becomes evidence that frightened people failed to understand it. When Inferi rise around him, he sees control. Ominis and Anne see that he has stopped recognizing danger. Solomon Sallow confronts Sebastian inside the catacomb and attacks both him and the protagonist while destroying the relic. The fight ends when Sebastian casts Avada Kedavra and kills his uncle. Anne arrives in time to see the body and destroys the spellbook before leaving with Solomon. The murder cannot be blamed on accidental magic. Sebastian knows the incantation and chooses it during anger, crossing the line Ominis spent the entire quest trying to keep visible. After Solomon's death, the protagonist and Ominis decide whether to report Sebastian. Turning him in removes him from Hogwarts and implies that he will face ministry justice. Protecting him leaves him free, but unable to repair what he has done. Anne refuses contact either way. The decision has no perfect, compassionate answer. Punishment cannot restore Solomon, while secrecy may teach Sebastian that friendship will absorb any consequence. The game leaves that discomfort unresolved. Sebastian's descent is long enough that no single spell can explain it. He begins with real love, encounters adult resignation, and concludes that every boundary is merely fear wearing authority's clothes. Ominis offers the warning Sebastian most needs because he does not speak from innocence. He knows the attraction, cruelty, and family language of the dark arts. Anne offers another warning by asking to be heard as the person whose body everyone is discussing. Sebastian listens least to the two people closest to the pain, His tragedy is not caring too much. It is letting care become permission to decide for everyone else. Crucio, Imperio, and Avada Kedavra can all be learned through Sebastian's quest line, but none is required to finish the main story or earn the Spellmaster achievement. Using them does not activate a morality meter, summon auras, or permanently alter the ending. Companions and enemies may react in the moment, yet the wider school does not prosecute the student. The freedom is mechanically broad and morally strange. Forbidden magic remains forbidden in dialogue while becoming available in ordinary combat. Natsai Onai, usually called Natty, transferred from Ouagadougou when her mother accepted the divination post. She describes the Ugandan school as the largest wizarding school in the world, and says students there commonly learn magic without wands. At Hogwarts, she finds wand use precise and enjoyable without believing it is necessary. Her perspective gently unsettles the British assumption that Ollivanders sits at the center of all magic. A wand is a tradition and tool, not magic's only language. Natty is an animagus who can transform into a gazelle, the same animal form her father once took. Unlike an involuntary werewolf transformation, animagus magic is learned and controlled. She uses the form during investigations and admits that transforming makes her feel close to him. The ability is never turned into a mount or combat upgrade for the protagonist. It remains personal, connected to home, memory, and a skill brought from another school. Natty carries guilt over her father's death because he died protecting her from attackers. This is why she repeatedly places herself between danger and other people. Her pursuit of Theophilus Harlow looks like bravery, but her mother recognizes the pattern beneath it. Natty is trying to make an old sacrifice feel deserved by becoming impossible to protect. Her relationship story moves toward accepting that survival did not create a debt she must repay through another death. Theophilus Harlow is Victor Rookwood's chief enforcer and the central target of Natty's investigation. His crimes reach beyond the protagonist's own conflict, affecting shopkeepers, travelers, and families such as the Bickles. Evidence gathered with Natty allows Officer Ruth Singer to act, though Harlow refuses a quiet arrest. By giving him a trail of victims and witnesses, the quest makes the Ashwinders feel like a local criminal organization rather than endless masked enemies waiting in camps. During the final confrontation, Harlow casts Crucio toward the protagonist, and Natty moves into its path. She survives, but wakes in the hospital with another reason to reconsider her instinctive self-sacrifice. The scene echoes her father's death without repeating its ending. This time, the protected friend remains present afterward and can tell her that pain was never the proof her courage needed. Poppy Sweeting comes from a family of poachers. Her parents raised her around the capture and sale of magical creatures, while her grandmother offered a different home and moral direction. Poppy rarely announces this history at first, because she fears being judged by it. Her knowledge of poacher habits, cages, and trade routes comes from lived experience. Every creature she rescues is therefore part of a choice to refuse the family business without pretending she never learned from it. Highwing is captured with another hippogriff during a visit to Falbarton Castle. Poppy and the protagonist climb the battlements, open cages, and escape from the roof on the rescued creatures. The quest, called the High Keep, unlocks flying mounts. It also changes the meaning of the hippogriff introduced in class. Highwing is no longer a beautiful animal brought for a lesson. She is a friend whose freedom has become something the student has fought to restore. Poppy discovers that poachers operate a dragon-fighting ring inside a tent, enchanted to contain an arena far larger than its entrance suggests. A chained dragon is forced to fight while spectators gamble. The protagonist frees it, but the escape leaves behind an egg belonging to the same creature. The scene shows the darkest end of the beast trade, living rarity converted into entertainment, with magic used to hide an entire industry behind a piece of canvas. Returning the dragon egg requires entering another poacher site and approaching the freed dragon's nest. The mother initially treats the visitors as threats, then recognizes the egg and takes it back. She does not become tame, join a vivarium, or offer a ride. That distance is important. Rescue is not ownership. Poppy's quest allows one of the world's most powerful creatures to remain wild after help has been given. Poppy's path offers a useful counterweight. She also breaks rules and enters danger because someone is suffering, yet she learns to give protection without making every life hers to direct. The dragon leaves. The Snidgets remain hidden. Highwing offers trust on her own terms. Even the centaurs can refuse help or question motives. Natty's story reaches a related lesson through human danger. Courage does not require becoming the shield every time. These friendships do not solve the larger politics of the Highlands. They change how a few people understand action, which is smaller and more believable. The search for golden Snidgets brings Poppy into contact with centaurs, including Doran. Snidgets were once used in Quidditch before the golden snitch replaced them, and hunting left the tiny birds endangered. Doran uses moonlight, standing stones, and an old sanctuary to locate a hidden nest. The birds are finally seen in safety, but cannot be captured by the protagonist. Like the dragon, they complete the quest by remaining beyond collection. A moonstone placed in the henge at night opens the path to the Snidget sanctuary. Light and shadow must align symbols on a stone door before the ruins allow entry. Poppy originally hides part of Doran's plan because she worries the centaurs will not trust a descendant of poachers. The sanctuary is protected by secrecy rather than cages. Its final success depends on Poppy telling the truth about where she came from and choosing what that knowledge will protect. Amit Thakar is the most prominent Ravenclaw friend, but he does not receive a long relationship chain equal to Sebastian, Natty, or Poppy. He loves astronomy, languages, and the idea of adventure more than actual danger. During a mine expedition, his gobbledygook proves useful even as the combat overwhelms him. Amit's limits are part of his charm. He can help without secretly being another fearless duelist, and afterward, he is quite content to return to telescopes. Gareth Weasley repeatedly experiments with potions, from the classroom brew that produces chaos, to a later request for a Fwooper feather. He is Professor Weasley's nephew, which means his rule-breaking happens under unusually close family supervision. Gareth dreams of creating mixtures people will remember. His failures are loud, but his ambition is not cruel. He represents the kind of ordinary school trouble that continues while the protagonist is uncovering repositories beneath everyone's feet. Zenobia Noakes' gobstones have been hidden around high places in the castle after other students grew tired of losing to her. The protagonist can retrieve 6 and either return or keep them. Zenobia is lonely, but she is also proud of the skill that irritates her classmates. The small quest does not fix her social life. It simply asks whether helping someone requires approving of everything that made them unpopular. Serona Ryan owns the 3 broomsticks and is one of the first Hogsmeade residents to stand openly against Rookwood. She remembers Lodgok kindly and directs the protagonist to him when cooperation seems impossible. The pub becomes a place where students, workers, travelers, and old friends overlap. Butterbeer can be found on tables, music moves through the room, and private rooms sit above the public floor. Hogsmeade's welcome has a person behind it, rather than existing as pure scenery. The haunted Hogsmeade shop quest begins when Cassandra Mason offers to sell a shop cheaply. The deal hides a poltergeist named Fastidio inside a magical chest, and a house elf named Penny bound to the property. What follows is a shifting, unsettling maze of mannequins, upside-down rooms, and moving corridors. Completing it allows the student to name the shop and sell gear to Penny at a better price. The business is modest, but the nightmare required to acquire it is not. Arn is a goblin painter and trader whose carts are stolen after he refuses to support Ranrock's loyalists. Recovering them lets him resume work on a landscape he has been trying to paint. Later, he may appear as a traveling merchant. His story is small enough to miss, and valuable for that reason. The rebellion affects goblins who want neither wizard domination nor Ranrock's war, including one person who would rather spend the afternoon matching color to a lake. A goblin named Garnuff asks for help rescuing his moon calf, Biscuit, from poachers. The cage holds several animals, and opening it at night can turn the search into a chase through grass as identical moon calves scatter. Biscuit can be returned, kept, or sold, choices that reveal more about the student than any honor meter records. The quest also produced one of the game's most memorable early bugs, when a cage lock could become impossible to open, later addressed through patches. Rococo is a niffler who wanders into Henrietta's hideaway, an old ruin also connected to treasure maps and a musical puzzle. Agnes Coffey asks for the pet's return, though the protagonist can decide otherwise. Nifflers are drawn to bright objects, so a dangerous hideout full of treasure is an entirely believable place for Rococo to disappear. The name makes the little creature sound more elegant than its habit of filling a pouch with anything that glitters. Small quests spread attention away from the people who know about ancient magic. A goblin wants his painting tools, a lonely child wants her gobstones, a shopkeeper wants a pet returned, while another wants a dangerous relative stopped. Some requests end with gratitude, others with bargaining, and a few reveal that the person asking has not been fully honest. The protagonist can move through these lives lightly, but the accumulation changes the map. A hamlet stops being a cluster of roofs after somebody there has waited for news. Hogsmeade stops being a shopping screen after Sirona risks making Rookwood angry. Several beast rescue quests allow the protagonist to return an animal, request payment, or keep it. Hazel the unicorn, Gwenera the diricawl, Biscuit, and Rococo can all end up inside a vivarium under certain choices. The game calls the capture system rescue because poachers threaten the dens. Yet these decisions quietly expose attention. A safe sanctuary can still become a collection, and good intentions do not erase the fact that the creature was removed from the wild. Hogwarts Legacy contains 34 learnable spells when essential abilities, combat magic, utility charms, unforgivable curses, and room of requirement magic are counted together. Not all are placed on the same combat wheel, and several work only in special spaces. The number feels larger in practice because talents alter behavior. Accio can pull several targets, Incendio can release a ring of fire, and Transformation can turn an enemy into an explosive object. Basic Cast and Revelio are among the first abilities Professor Fig teaches. Basic Cast provides the repeated bolts used between stronger spells, while Revelio sends a pulse through the environment to expose pages, containers, mechanisms, enemies, and hidden objects. Revelio is cast so often that its spoken name becomes part of the sound of walking. The charm effectively turns curiosity into a visible wave, letting walls answer whenever the student suspects that a quiet corner knows something. Protego creates a shield when timed against an incoming attack. Holding the response can send Stupefy toward the targeted enemy, turning defense into a counter. Colored warning circles distinguish attacks that can be blocked from red attacks that must be dodged. A perfectly timed Protego can gain stronger effects through talents. The system makes dueling depend on listening and peripheral attention as much as aiming, since danger often announces itself behind the student's back. Enemy shields use the same yellow, purple, and red categories as the spell menu. Control spells such as Levioso break yellow barriers. Force spells such as Accio and Depulso break purple. Damage spells such as Confringo and Defindo break red. The color language keeps battles readable when several opponents surround the protagonist. It also encourages varied spell sets, since 4 powerful red attacks cannot answer every shield no matter how much damage they cause. Force and control spells can be combined with the environment. Accio pulls an enemy close, Levioso suspends them, Descendo slams a raised target down, and Depulso sends bodies or objects away. A cliff, wall, explosive barrel, or another enemy can become part of the sequence. The spells were familiar as classroom magic long before this game, but combat gives them physical rhythm. A charm used to summon a book can also remove the distance that made a hostile wizard feel safe. Inferi cannot be harmed normally until fire awakens their vulnerability. Incendio works at close range, while Confringo travels farther. Once burning, the undead can be struck by other attacks. This rule connects creature lore with combat, instead of treating fire as one damage color among many. A dark tomb may contain enough Inferi to make a student wait for cooldowns, listening for movement, while the one spell that makes the dead mortal again is not ready. Transformation can turn a living enemy into an object for a short time. With its talent upgrade, the target becomes an explosive barrel that can be thrown at someone else using ancient magic throw. It is one of the game's strangest escalations. A respectable transfiguration lesson becomes a way to convert a person into battlefield ammunition. The spell returns them if they survive, but the animation makes clear how alarming advanced classroom magic can become outside school. The disillusionment charm makes the student difficult to see rather than completely invisible. It supports stealth through camps and the library, while Petrificus Totalis incapacitates an unaware enemy at close range. Talents can improve movement and allow more than one nearby target to be affected. Eye chests notice direct approaches and clamp themselves shut, so disillusionment is also used for theft. The shy-looking chests contain 500 galleons each, giving secrecy a reliable economic reward. Ancient magic finishers spend a meter built through combat and produce attacks suited to different enemies. A troll may be struck by lightning, a spider crushed into the ground, or a dark wizard transformed in ways ordinary spells cannot achieve. Ancient magic throw is separate and can hurl highlighted barrels, crates, weapons, and even an enemy's own projectile. These powers make the protagonist visibly exceptional before the keepers explain why, and they remain more violent than the calm blue traces first suggest. Combat builds a vocabulary out of the same magic used for lessons and locks. Color becomes grammar. Distance becomes a sentence that Accio can shorten or Depulso can end. Fire means something different when the dead are moving, and a shield becomes an opportunity if Stupefy is waiting behind it. The system is quick, but it rewards composure more than frantic casting. 4 spells cool down, another set waits. An object beside an enemy begins to glow. For a moment, the room is read as a whole arrangement of possibilities before the wand chooses one. Many enemies have specific counters recorded in the collections menu. A troll's club can be flipped into its face after a heavy strike. A dugbog's tongue can be lifted before being sliced. A pensive guardian's orb can be broken with a spell matching its color. Spiders can be buried as they prepare to attack. These responses make knowledge more valuable than repeating the strongest curse. The field guide gradually becomes a dueling manual written through encounters. Experience is tied primarily to completing field guide challenges and quests, rather than endlessly defeating random enemies. A spider contributes, while a spider challenge remains unfinished, but respawning creatures do not provide infinite progress after the relevant goals are complete. This keeps level 40 connected to exploring the whole game. Combat, pages, beasts, Merlin Trials, and story work all feed the same education. The student grows by filling the guide, not by standing outside one camp until its occupants return. Hogwarts Legacy has no global morality system. Dialogue choices may alter payment, immediate reactions, possession of an item, or the outcome of Sebastian's story, but the castle does not assign a lasting good or evil score. A student can be generous during one conversation and cast Avada Kedavra in the next battle. The absence creates freedom and dissonance at once. Character is expressed in moments, yet the world rarely gathers those moments into a reputation. The spell menu begins with one active set of 4 slots. Talents can unlock 3 additional sets, allowing 16 assigned spells to be switched during combat and exploration. Utility magic competes with damage unless sets are organized carefully. A door puzzle may require Lumos, a broken bridge Reparo, and a camp several combat colors. Building the wheel becomes a form of personal memory, arranging magic so the hand knows where to find it before thought catches up. The visual marks resemble glowing green crosses, turning a crowd into a connected network of harm before the final spell reaches them. Combat arenas offer waves of enemies in enclosed ruins. 2 are available in the main world, while the Dark Arts Battle Arena belongs to the Dark Arts Pack. That special arena temporarily grants the 3 unforgivable curses, even if Sebastian has not taught them. The setting lets the forbidden spells be tried outside story consequence. Statues watch from around the circle, while one wave replaces another, closer to a magical endurance test than a secret duel. 4 difficulty settings are available: story, easy, normal, and hard. Story mode changes more than enemy health. Spell learning traces cannot fail. Some timing demands are relaxed, and beast capture can skip its button sequence. Difficulty may be changed during a save. The design allows someone interested mainly in the castle and story to keep moving without mastering every combat signal, while hard mode makes shields, damage, and timing much less forgiving. There are 48 talents across the spells, dark arts, core, stealth, and room of requirement categories. Talent points begin accumulating from level 5, and the level cap of 40 allows 36 points, so the original design prevents buying everything at once. The free summer update later added a reset option at a gold cost. Before that change, each purchase was permanent, and 12 talents always had to remain outside a completed build. Gear occupies 6 slots: handwear, facewear, headwear, neckwear, cloaks and robes, and outfits. New pieces can raise offense or defense, yet any discovered appearance can be applied over the equipped item without cost. A scarf with poor statistics can therefore remain visible after being replaced by a stronger one. Hoods may also be raised or lowered. The system separates fashion from power, a useful mercy in a school where even legendary equipment can look like something found in an eccentric aunt's wardrobe. Unidentified gear must be examined at the desk of description in the room of requirement. Its quality ranges through green, blue, purple, and orange tiers, with higher rarity allowing stronger upgrades and traits. Loot scales to the student's level when acquired, so saving a chest does not preserve one fixed historic item. The desk turns mystery clothing into known clothing, with a brief sweep of magic, like a tailor, appraiser, and lost property office combined. All that power still leaves ordinary maintenance. Clothing fills the inventory, potions run out, plants need pots of the right size, and stronger fabric needs materials that cannot be conjured from nothing. The room of requirement gathers these needs into one place and gives them a gentler pace. A student who spent the afternoon throwing trolls can return to move a chair, identify a hat, or wait beside a cauldron. The room does not ask which version is the real education. It simply grows large enough to hold both. Deke introduces the Enchanted Loom, which upgrades gear using materials collected from cared-for beasts. Feathers, fur, hair, and other resources improve offense or defense, while traits add bonuses to spells, plants, ancient magic, or protection against certain enemies. The system connects sanctuary life with combat equipment. Brushing a Kneasel in a quiet meadow may eventually strengthen a robe worn in a goblin mine, though the animal remains unharmed and can provide material again later. The Room of Requirement appears after Professor Weasley takes the student to search for it. At first, it is crowded with objects left by people who needed a hiding place over many years. Deke helps clear and reshape it into a private workspace. Its entrance sits in a corridor, but disappears when the room is not required. Once unlocked, a flue flame provides direct access, allowing the student to leave a distant coast and return instantly to a space that technically resists being found. Room customization uses Moonstone to conjure furniture, workstations, rugs, statues, lights, and architectural decorations. Many objects can be resized, recolored, or switched among visual styles such as botanical, scientific, eclectic, and Gothic. Evanesco removes them and refunds the material. The room can therefore change from a crowded workshop into a nearly empty hall without losing resources. Its magic treats interior design as reversible thought, ready to become another shape whenever its owner needs something different. Deke provides the knapsack, an enchanted bag used to remove beasts from poacher-threatened dens and carry them into Sanctuary. Capturing requires getting close and completing a short sequence, with Levioso or Arresto Momentum helping slower hands. The bag's name plays lightly on kidnapping, an uneasiness the story answers by calling the act rescue. Beasts can later be released into the wild, moved between vivariums, named or sold to Ellie Peck at Brood and Peck. 4 vivariums eventually open inside the Room of Requirement. They resemble a sunny meadow, a coastal shore, a swamp, and a mountain grassland. Each is larger inside than the doorway and has its own weather, music, ruins, and hidden collection chests. The spaces arrive through Deke's questline as more creatures need shelter. Opening a plain wall and stepping into sea air makes the Room of Requirement feel less like one chamber than a house containing several pieces of the world. Each vivarium can hold 12 individual beasts, but no more than 4 species at once. With 4 sanctuaries, there is room for every capturable species and some family groups, though not every color and offspring variation together. The limit encourages arrangement by habitat or temperament, even though the game does not demand one correct distribution. A shore can become a hippogriff refuge, while the swamp offers a fitting twilight home for thestrals and mooncalves. Beast breeding becomes available after Deek's Foal of the Dead quest. A male and female of the same species can use a breeding pen, producing an offspring after time passes. 12 species count toward the breeding achievement. The phoenix is excluded because only one is rescued, and no partner can be found. Offspring remain young rather than growing into adults, preserving a permanent small version of each creature inside the sanctuary. Most capturable beasts can appear in rare alternate colors marked by a small star beside their name. Players often call them shiny beasts. The variations do not produce more material or sell for a higher price. Their rarity is visual. A pale niffler, white graphorn, or unusually colored unicorn becomes desirable because discovery itself feels special. The system rewards returning to dens without making the rare animal objectively better than the ordinary one already waiting to be brushed. Brushing and feeding a beast places it in a cared-for state, after which it provides a species-specific material. A beast feeder can handle food automatically, while the brush still invites direct attention. Toys conjured from a toy box produce different reactions. Balls roll, birds chase, and larger animals nudge objects across the grass. These interactions have little effect on the central plot. Their purpose is to make a sanctuary feel inhabited between visits made for upgrades. Plants grown in the Room of Requirement require different pot sizes. Dittany, knotgrass, mallowsweet, and shrivelfig fit smaller arrangements, while fluxweed and venomous tentacula need larger pots. Seeds are bought once and can be replanted without paying again. Composters can improve yields, and multiple table spellcrafts increase production. The room gradually turns ingredients that were expensive in Hogsmeade into a patient routine of planting, waiting, and gathering. The workshop can become elaborate, but its most convincing moments are domestic. Water glints beyond a vivarium doorway. A creature curls up while another chases a ball. Leaves become ready for harvest without ceremony. Deek stands nearby with memories of other rooms and other masters, pleased that this one is being used to care for things. The contrast with the repository below Hogwarts is striking. Both are hidden chambers containing unusual power. One is guarded through secrecy and fear. The other becomes useful through daily attention, open shelves, and repeated acts too small for a pensive memory. 3 plants can be deployed directly in battle. Mandrakes scream and stun nearby enemies. Chinese chomping cabbages pursue targets with snapping mouths. Venomous tentacula remain planted and spit damaging projectiles. Talents strengthen each behavior, including releasing an extra cabbage from a single use. Herbology can therefore support an entire combat style in which the student arrives with pockets full of gardening and lets the greenhouse fight. 7 named potions are available when Felix Felicis is included: Wiggenweld, Edurus, Maxima, Focus, Invisibility, Thunderbrew, and Felix Felicis. Recipes require ingredients collected from plants, beasts, enemies, shops, and the open world. Brewing takes real time, measured in seconds, rather than an instant menu selection. A row of potion stations can keep several cauldrons working together, giving preparation a visible place before a difficult journey. Wiggenweld is the healing potion carried in a stack and used immediately during combat. Dittany leaves and Horklump juice form its recipe. Bottles can be found in camps and chests as well as brewed. Talents increase the amount of health restored, which makes the same green bottle remain useful at higher levels. The name comes from wider Wizarding World lore, but the game turns it into the repeated practical answer to all the damage a 5th year somehow survives. Edurus hardens defense and briefly gives the student a stony appearance, while Maxima increases spell damage. Their advanced talents add dramatic effects. Edurus can provide invulnerability and deflect projectiles, and Maxima can help basic cast break shields, using both turns' potion preparation into a temporary shift in combat rules. Professor Sharp's assignments deliberately require trying such mixtures, teaching that a capable duelist does not rely on wand movements alone. Focus shortens spell cooldowns, Thunderbrew creates a damaging storm around the drinker, and invisibility makes stealth possible without occupying a spell slot. Felix Felicis reveals large loot chests on the minimap for one in-game day. It began as a PlayStation-related bonus before the 2024 update made it broadly available. Unlike the extraordinary luck described in the books, this version has a narrow, practical effect. It does not win duels or solve choices, it helps locate treasure. Additional Room of Requirement devices can automate small parts of preparation. Hopping pots periodically produce random potions. Chopping stations generate plant ingredients. Dung composters make fertilizer, and material refiners create moonstone. None replaces the need to explore completely, but a well-built room continues working while the student is away. Returning after a quest can feel like entering a workshop whose quiet, magical labor never needed supervision. Broom flight is unlocked after Madame Kagawa's first lesson, and a broom can then be purchased from Spintwitch's sporting needs. Albie Weeks believes his design can be improved and asks the protagonist to gather performance data. Unlike flying beasts, a broom can be summoned quickly and upgraded. It also fits through tighter routes, making it the most practical way to cross the Highlands, even after grander mounts become available. Imelda Reyes sets time trials at 3 courses and initially treats the new student as an unproven interruption. Beating her times provides the data Albie needs for 3 broom upgrades. Her confidence softens into competitive respect rather than instant friendship. Rings guide each route, while yellow bubbles restore the boost meter. The races turn valleys, bridges, cliffs, and railway lines into a course whose shape is best understood at speed. Broom models change appearance but share performance once the same upgrades are installed. Some are sold in Hogsmeade, others by traveling merchants, and several come from popping balloon sets. The free summer update added the Lavender Borealis broom among its rewards. Choosing a broom is therefore closer to choosing clothing than selecting a vehicle class. Handle shape, seat, bristles, and decorations express taste, while Albie's work determines speed. Flight is prohibited inside Hogwarts and most of Hogsmeade, with a crossed symbol appearing when a mount cannot be summoned. Other locations, caves, and certain tunnels impose similar restrictions. Ravenclaw's rooftop is a rare house-connected landing area. The boundary preserves the castle as a place walked through rather than bypassed window by window. Outside the walls, taking off transforms hills and roads into a continuous landscape. Flying also changes emotional distance. A ruin that took 10 minutes to reach on foot becomes a shape beneath the broom. Feldcroft, Hogsmeade, and the Forbidden Forest can appear together in one broad turn, their separate troubles folded into the same valley. Landing reverses that simplification. Grass regains height. Doors have locks. A person beside the road has a voice, and perhaps a problem that the map reduced to a small symbol. The freedom of the broom is real, but the world's detail waits close to the ground. 13 magical beast species can be collected: Puffskein, Niffler, Mooncalf, Kneasel, Jobberknoll, Fwooper, Diracaul, Giant Purple Toad, Unicorn, Thestral, Hippogriff, Graphorn, and Phoenix. Several other creatures appear without entering the knapsack, including dragons, centaurs, the giant squid, spiders, and dugbogs. The sanctuary collection is broad but deliberately incomplete. Some beings are people, some are enemies, and some should remain too large or independent to keep behind one enchanted doorway. Puffskeins are small round creatures, content to eat almost anything. Their long tongues appear during feeding, and their fur is used for the first level of gear upgrades. A student named Duncan Hobhouse fears them after being mocked, leading to the nickname Puffskein Dunkeen. The contrast is part of the joke. One of the gentlest animals in the world becomes the center of a school reputation. Inside a vivarium, Puffskeins roll, bounce, and sleep, with very little concern for human embarrassment. Nifflers search obsessively for coins and bright objects, storing finds inside magically spacious pouches. In the open world, their dens often contain scattered treasure, as if the landscape itself reveals what caught their attention. Niffler fur upgrades equipment, while rescued individuals include Rococo. The game captures the creature's comic contradiction. It is small enough to cradle, clever enough to rob a room, and innocent enough to look surprised when anyone objects. Mooncalves leave their burrows only at night and dance beneath moonlight. Their enormous eyes and cautious movements make daytime dens look empty until the map's clock is changed. Mooncalf fur becomes an upgrade material, but their nocturnal behavior is the more memorable reward. A group hopping in a circle under the stars gives the Highlands one of its gentlest routines, continuing whether the protagonist watches or quietly closes the knapsack. Measles resemble large cats, though they are intelligent magical creatures capable of detecting suspicious people. Their fur is valuable for stronger gear upgrades. They arch, stretch, play, and gather around the student with enough familiarity to make a vivarium feel briefly domestic. The first classroom Kazel scratches a boy who has been mishandling it, a reminder that affection does not make the species helpless. Trust is offered with claws still available. Jobberknolls are small blue birds that remain silent throughout life and release every sound they ever heard at the moment of death. Hogwarts Legacy does not dramatize that final cry. Instead, rescued birds provide feathers peacefully after care. Whoopers are brighter and more dangerous to hear, since prolonged song can cause insanity, while diricals can vanish and reappear to escape threats. The three species make a vivarium sky feel busy in completely different ways. Hippogriffs combine the front of a great eagle with the hindquarters of a horse and expect courtesy before contact. Highwing becomes the principal flying mount, while the onyx hippogriff Caligo was offered as a pre-order reward and later made more widely available. Hippogriffs can also live and breed in vivariums, though ordinary rescued individuals cannot replace Highwing as the selected mount. One friendship, rather than species ownership, carries the rider into the air. Thestrals are skeletal winged horses, visible only to those who have witnessed and understood death. After George Osric's death, the protagonist can see them from the opening onward. Wild Thestrals inhabit gloomy dens, and Deke's breeding quest centers on a pair. Sepulchria, the named Thestral mount, belongs to the Dark Arts pack. Riding one turns the game's first image of newly visible death into a form of travel, though ordinary Thestrals may also remain safely in the swamp vivarium. Unicorns live primarily in a secluded den within the Forbidden Forest. They are harder to capture than smaller beasts and may require a slowing charm before the knapsack can finish. A named unicorn called Hazel is unusually beautiful and involved in a rescue request. Unicorn hair is one of the most valuable upgrade materials. Unlike Highwing, A unicorn cannot be ridden, so its presence remains quiet, a pale creature moving through sanctuary grass without becoming transport. The Graphorn is the only ground mount among the named rideable beasts. The Lord of the Shore can charge through enemies and obstacles after Sanbakar's trial, and another Graphorn can later be found so the species may breed. Its den lies on the far coast, fitting an animal described as rare and aggressive. Where a broom avoids rough ground, the Graphorn answers it directly, lowering its armored head and making the road move. By the time every vivarium has opened, the Room of Requirement contains an impossible little geography. Meadow, coast, swamp, and mountain share walls with brewing stations and school corridors. Creatures rescued from distant regions can live a few steps apart without the sanctuary pretending they are identical. The phoenix keeps its solitude. Puffskeins gather easily. Highwing carries the memory of a castle roof, while a mooncalf brings the night of its den indoors. The collection works best when it feels less like completion and more like several quiet habitats that happen to trust the same door. The phoenix is found through Deke's final major beast quest, after his friend Tobbs has been lost in a spider-filled cave. Fearing poachers will reach the bird, Deke sends the student toward Phoenix Mountain. The phoenix does not require a frantic capture sequence. It waits at the summit, circles the chamber, and enters the knapsack willingly after the danger is cleared. Back in the Room of Requirement, a fourth vivarium opens for it. Only one phoenix exists in the game, so it cannot be bred or encountered as a random den population. Giant purple toads are the heaviest amphibians available for rescue. They inhabit wet dens, move with deliberate hops, and provide toadwarts for equipment upgrades after being fed and brushed. Their size makes the word toad sound almost insufficient, yet they are calmer in a vivarium than many smaller creatures. A rare color variation can appear like other capturable species. Placing them near swamp water gives that sanctuary a low, patient form of life beside the quicker movement of thestrals and mooncalves. Ellie Peck at Brood and Peck accepts rescued beasts in exchange for galleons and sells animal materials once her Hogsmeade shop opens to the protagonist. Every beast sells for the same base amount, regardless of species or rarity, preventing a shiny unicorn from becoming a vastly better commodity than a puffskein. The mechanic is explained as finding safe homes, though the transaction remains deliberately easy. It creates a quiet, ethical question beneath a useful economy. How often can profitable capture still be called rescue before the word starts doing too much work? Poacher cages can hold several creatures at once, and the lock may need Alohomora before any animal can flee. Some freed beasts vanish into the landscape, while named rescues must be found among the movement. Poacher camps also contain skins, tools, and comments that show the trade extends well beyond one villain. Poppy recognizes their methods because she grew up around them. The enemy faction is therefore tied to a functioning market, not merely a group wearing matching masks in the forest. Not every creature is treated as a sanctuary animal. Spiders, dugbogs, mongrels, and trolls remain hostile categories with their own weaknesses and challenge records. Acromantulas appear as especially dangerous spiders, including the absconder beneath Arrowshire. Dugbogs hide in marsh water before lunging, and trolls may carry armored, forest, river, or fortified variations. The distinction between beast and enemy follows behavior, and design needs more than biological logic. A giant purple toad receives a brush. Another enormous amphibious creature may receive Diffindo. Leaving the sanctuary makes that distinction feel sharper. Inside, every animal has space, food, and music. Outside, the same landscape is divided into dens, roads, farms, camps, and territories shaped by fear. A poacher sees inventory. A villager may see danger near the garden. Poppy sees lives that deserve freedom, while Professor Howin speaks more readily about usefulness. The game never creates one tidy rule that settles every encounter. Instead, it lets different attitudes occupy the same valley. Crossing from a mooncalf den into Hogsmeade means moving between those ideas, from moonlit creatures that avoid human attention to a village built around magical human needs. Hogsmeade is described in Wizarding World lore as Britain's only entirely non-Muggle settlement, and Hogwarts Legacy makes it the main commercial centre of the map. The first school visit supplies the protagonist's wand, spellcrafts, potion ingredients, seeds, and other essentials. Later trips reveal alleys, locked homes, bridges, gardens, and residents with problems of their own. The village changes decoration with the season, so its crooked roofs and smoking chimneys carry autumn leaves, winter snow, and spring colour along with the school. The Hogsmeade Ollivanders is a branch of the wand-making family business, run in this era by Gerbold Ollivander. Ravenclaw's house-specific quest begins when he asks for help recovering a family wand stolen by Richard Jackdaw during a brief period working at the shop. The investigation leads to the Owlery, where pieces of a puzzle are hidden among the perches. This makes the wand store more than a character creation stop for one house. It also has a small family grievance still waiting years after the thief lost his head. The Three Broomsticks and Hog's Head offer opposite kinds of shelter. Sirona's pub is warm, busy, and socially central, while the Hog's Head is dimmer, rougher, and easier for a goblin such as Lodgok to visit without attracting the same attention. Both names are familiar from later stories, but their 1890s rooms have their own regulars. Walking between them takes only a short distance. Socially, they occupy different parts of the village, one built around welcome and the other around being left alone. Honeydukes can be entered through its front door or reached by a secret passage from Hogwarts during Gareth Weasley's Descending for Sweets quest. Inside are shelves of confectionery, animated displays, and small samples that the protagonist can eat. Zonko's joke shop nearby is equally detailed despite having no major shopping system. Dung bombs, noisy toys, and dangerous jokes fill several floors. These shops exist partly for wandering, allowing the village to feel commercial even where the player has almost nothing practical to buy. Gladrag's Wizardwear sells gear under the care of Augustus Hill, while Dervish and Bangers shares the building and displays magical instruments. Wiseacre's wizarding equipment can be seen as another named storefront, even though it is not operated as a full shop. Hogsmeade's retail geography is more complete than the purchase menus alone require. Window displays, signs, counters, and upper rooms suggest businesses serving many needs beyond a fifth year's combat statistics. Hogsmeade gives the school a neighbour rather than a backdrop. Students can leave stone corridors and enter a place where adulthood appears in miniature. Rent, shops, deliveries, pubs, grudges, and work. Magic has not removed ordinary commerce. It has made the signs move and some inventory bite. A broom still needs a cellar. A potion still needs ingredients grown, gathered, bottled, and carried. Wand makers inherit a trade across generations. The village makes the wizarding world feel like a society, because not everyone inside it is attending the same school adventure. Potions and plants divide across several specialist shops. J. Pippin's Potions sells recipes, ingredients, and completed brews. The Magic Neep supplies seeds and produce through Timothy Teasdale. Dogweed and Deathcap located beyond the busier center, handles combat plants and their seeds under the watch of Beatrice Green. Tomes and scrolls sell spellcrafts for Room of Requirement stations. Preparing one advanced potion can therefore trace a small route through village trade before the first ingredient reaches a cauldron. The Highlands map is divided into 14 named regions, beginning with North Ford Bog and running south through the Forbidden Forest, Hogsmeade Valley, Hogwarts areas, Feldcroft, Poidsea Coast, Marrenweem Lake, Manor Cape, Cragcroftshire, and Clagmar Coast. Their boundaries are administrative tools rather than magical walls. Broomflight crosses most of them without interruption. Zooming the map outward reveals regional completion totals, turning a broad painted landscape into a quiet record of what remains undiscovered. The Forbidden Forest lies close enough to Hogwarts for its trees to be visible from school grounds. Inside, paths split among spider lairs, poacher camps, unicorn habitat, centaur territory, Merlin Trials, and Jackdaw's tomb. The forest does not become uniformly dark. Shafts of light, clearings, streams, and purple flowers interrupt the older trees. That variation makes danger less predictable. A bright path may still lead toward an acromantula, while one of the calmest unicorn dens waits inside the place students are warned not to enter. Feldcroft is both a region and the hamlet where Anne and Solomon Sallow live. Stone circles and old ruins surround cultivated fields near the sea. Isadora Morganach's childhood home stood in the same area centuries earlier, allowing the main plot and Sebastian's story to occupy one landscape without sharing a cause. The village can be attacked during Sebastian's quests, and Anne's abandoned belongings still suggest school life interrupted. Feldcroft looks open and peaceful from the air, while holding two of the game's deepest family sorrows. Reaching Poidsea Coast by land requires passing through the coastal cavern, a long tunnel controlled by Ranrock's loyalists. The map appears narrow at that point, and the mountain wall makes the southern half feel hidden until the passage opens. Brooms cannot simply fly over every summit to skip it. The restriction gives the coast a sense of arrival. After mines, machinery, and stone, the route releases the student into a wider region with new hamlets and water stretching beyond the cliffs. Marrenweem Lake, Manor Cape, Cragcroftshire, and Clagmar Coast form the far south, where the school itself feels distant. Bainborough and Cragcroft offer inhabited pauses among ruins, camps, and rocky shorelines. Henrietta's Hideaway connects several treasure quests inside one deceptive structure, while the Graphorn Den waits at the edge of the land. The farther south the protagonist travels, the less the world feels organized around classes. Hogwarts remains visible only as an idea and a flu destination. 11 small hamlets are spread across the wider map, including Pitt upon Ford, Upper and Lower Hogsfield, Arranshire, Brockborough, Keenbridge, Irondale, Feldcroft, Bainborough, Marrenweem, and Cragcroft. Some contain merchants, homes, community gardens, or side quests tied to local residents. Their scale is deliberately modest. A hamlet may be a handful of houses beside a bridge, yet locked bedrooms, family letters, and conversations imply lives that continue when the student passes overhead. Flue flames provide fast travel after each location is discovered. Every point is represented by a bust of Ignatia Wildsmith, the witch credited with inventing flue powder in the 13th century. Her voice comments frequently when the protagonist walks past, making an ancient inventor one of the game's most persistent companions. Fast travel itself is instantaneous from the map, rather than requiring a fireplace animation, but the green flames and Ignatia's presence tie the convenience to an established magical invention. A working railway crosses parts of the Highlands, and the Scarlet Hogwarts Express can occasionally be seen pulling its carriages through the landscape. The protagonist does not ride it during the story, having arrived by flying carriage instead. Its appearance follows the timetable of the world rather than a mission marker. Seeing it from a broom creates an odd meeting between two kinds of magical travel, one rider moving freely above and a train following iron lines toward a school year already underway. Treasure vaults and cairn dungeons fill the countryside with short underground puzzles. Some ask for spell cubes placed on matching symbols. Others use rotating walls, moving floors, fire, ice, depulso, or creatures that must be guided into position. Their rewards are usually gear rather than unique story artifacts. The abundance suggests generations of hidden property beneath farms and ruins. In the Highlands, almost any stone door may belong to someone who believed a shirt or pair of spectacles deserved architectural protection. Once the southern roads have opened, the map can feel almost too generous. Symbols crowd the parchment, each offering a brief reason to land. The more restful way to travel is to let completion wait. Follow smoke from one chimney. Stop because a ruin catches the evening light. Listen when Revelio answers from somewhere beneath a bridge. The activities were designed to be discovered in passing as much as cleared in rows. Their repeated forms become most natural when distance, weather, and accidental detours separate one trial from the next. 95 Merlin Trials are scattered outside Hogwarts. Nora Treadwell introduces them beside Lower Hogsfield and explains that the challenge sites were created by Merlin while he was a Slytherin student. Activating each one consumes mallow sweet leaves. Completing all 95 earns an achievement, though challenge rewards finish before every site is required. The trials make Merlin's school years feel less like a distant legend. He apparently spent a remarkable amount of time leaving puzzles across the countryside. Merlin Trials repeat several puzzle families, lighting braziers before they sink, guiding moths to stones, rolling boulders into hollows, repairing statues, destroying stone spheres, jumping across platforms, and moving groups of smaller balls. Their practical reward is increased gear inventory after completed challenge tiers are claimed. The magic therefore expands a student's pockets through tests of observation. Forgotten Trials solve the very modern problem of finding too many gloves in locked chests. The world contains 236 field guide page locations, when the named Revelio entries and every puzzle-based page are counted together. 150 are Revelio entries stored in the collections menu. The rest help complete regional and challenge totals without all becoming written lore. This difference explains why two counters can seem to disagree. A completed collection of historical entries does not necessarily mean every loose sheet circling the rafters has been caught. Revelio pages attach short histories to architecture, objects, portraits, food, statues, shops, and magical customs. The castle alone records subjects as grand as founder relics and as small as a bathroom sink. A clear chime grows louder near an undiscovered entry when Revelio is cast. Reading the page turns a decorative prop into part of the school record. The guide teaches Hogwarts through attention rather than one enormous lecture, letting a corridor reveal itself one object at a time. There are 33 demiguise statues involved in Gladwin Moon's quest, 3 collected during his first lesson, and 30 more hidden across Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, and the Highlands. Their moons can be taken only at night. Returning enough teaches Alohomora levels 2 and 3, opening stronger locks. The culprit is eventually revealed as Piers Pemberton, who placed them to torment Moon after a childhood grievance. A worldwide unlocking spell is improved through one man's very specific fear. 16 Daedalian keys flutter through Hogwarts after Nellie Ogspire explains the old tradition. Following one leads to a locked cabinet, where the key must be slapped into its keyhole as it darts past. Each cabinet contains a house token. Returning all 16 to the chest in the chosen common room unlocks a relic house uniform, whose embroidered emblem glows during spellcasting. The long castle search ends with clothing that visibly answers the magic learned along the way. 15 astronomy tables can be completed after Amit's lesson, while 20 ancient magic hotspots expand the finisher meter after their traces are collected. Both activities ask the protagonist to look beyond ground level, but in opposite directions. Astronomy aligns distant stars through a lens. Ancient magic follows nearby light through ruins, rooftops, and broken rooms. One studies patterns that belong to everyone. The other strengthens a perception only a few people possess. Exploration also includes 20 landing platforms, 32 sets of balloons, and 15 butterfly trails. Platforms register when a broom touches their center. Balloon groups burst through flight, while butterflies lead from the place they are found to hidden collection chests. None needs a lengthy explanation from a professor. They reward 3 kinds of wandering: landing somewhere that looks deliberate, flying through something arranged in the sky, and trusting a small moving cluster in the grass. The 3 official Hogwarts secrets are found in the clock tower, beneath the viaduct bridge, and above the headmaster's office. The bridge puzzle matches numbered braziers to symbols and opens a hatch below. The key of admittance unlocks a chamber near the headmaster's private rooms. Completing the set advances a special exploration challenge. These are not the only secrets in the castle, but the field guide treats them as its 3 largest architectural riddles. Arithmancy doors display animal symbols around a stone arch, and 2 rotating question mechanisms nearby. A hidden classroom note reveals that the creatures represent numbers from 0 through 9, arranged clockwise. The symbols in each triangle must add to the number at its center. Once the code is understood, the doors stop being guesses and become small equations. Behind them are collection chests and rooms that make arithmetic feel like a legitimate method of opening walls. These puzzles teach a final habit of castle life: return. A locked cabinet, silent statue, blank frame, or numbered door may be incomprehensible the first time. Later, one spell or piece of knowledge changes it. Hogwarts becomes layered through memory, because new ability is laid over an old route. The student does not merely gain access to new places. Familiar corridors acquire second meanings. That is why the most satisfying secrets are often beside rooms visited many times. The castle was not empty before the answer arrived. It was waiting for the question to become precise. Other field guide pages require different spells. Flying sheets are pulled down with Accio. Empty moth frames reveal a location under Lumos, then attract a moth back to the picture. Dragon-shaped braziers respond to fire. Levioso raises small statues holding spheres, and some pages hide behind locked doors. The collection quietly checks whether newly learned magic has changed the way old hallways are seen. A blank frame encountered in September becomes a solvable invitation after the right charm is known. The entrance associated with the Chamber of Secrets can be found in a girl's bathroom in the Slytherin dungeons. A snake is carved into one of the sink taps, matching the clue described in later lore. The protagonist cannot open it, even as a Slytherin, because speaking Parseltongue is not part of character creation. Ominis possesses that ability, but is never brought there. The game acknowledges the chamber without spending its mystery on a story set long before Tom Riddle opens it. Two especially hidden castle spaces are the Death Day Party Room and the room behind the werewolf tapestries. Ghosts celebrate beneath the dungeons with translucent food and instruments, while the tapestry room conceals a sequence about a witch mistaken for a werewolf. Walking through the right panel reveals more than the corridor suggests. Neither location changes the main plot. They reward the belief that a castle this old should contain rooms whose importance belongs entirely to someone else's story. The Polyjuice plot turns the protagonist into Headmaster Black so they can obtain the password to his office from House Elf Scrope. Students and professors react to the disguised headmaster, offering chances to cancel an unpopular order, meddle in conversations, and discover what people say when they think authority is listening. The transformation is temporary and tightly scripted, but it briefly changes exploration through identity rather than invisibility. Professor Fig's plan succeeds because Black's arrogance has made imitation easier than cooperation. Hogwarts is filled with small performances that can occur without a quest. Suits of armor quarrel until one destroys the other. Portrait musicians gradually add instruments to an arrangement. Peeves harasses students. Ghosts pass through walls, and cats can be petted almost anywhere they appear. House elves clean, paper birds fly, books reshelve themselves, and students receive howlers. These scenes are short and often repeat, yet they keep a hallway from feeling like an empty route between icons. Ambient scenes are easy to overlook because they rarely add experience or collection progress. They are also part of what makes returning possible. A finished quest removes its marker, but a portrait can continue muttering every afternoon. Armor can lose the same argument again. The castle does not know that the main story is approaching a climax, so ordinary absurdities continue beside it. That indifference gives Hogwarts weight. Buildings made only for plot seem to fall asleep between missions. This one keeps playing music, delivering mail, cleaning spills, and sending students late to class whether the repository is safe or not. The English voice cast includes Sebastian Croft and Amelia Gething as the protagonists' two voice options, Simon Pegg as Phineas Nigellus Black, Leslie Nichol as Professor Weasley, Candace Kane as Professor Onai, and Luke Youngblood as Everett Clopton. Actors perform students, ghosts, goblins, professors, and villagers spread across an unusually large script. The pitch slider modifies the protagonist's selected voice without replacing the underlying performance, allowing one reading to occupy several different sounding characters. The original score was composed principally by Chucky Myers, known professionally as C, J. Scott Rakosi, and Peter Murray. Music changes between common rooms, classrooms, open landscapes, battles, and seasonal states, while avoiding simple repetition of the film themes. The soundtrack received a Grammy nomination for video game score. Its most effective work is often quiet, a few notes beneath nighttime corridors, then a fuller arrangement when the castle emerges over a hill after hours spent elsewhere. Accessibility options include 4 difficulty modes, subtitle controls, text scaling, high contrast display, camera and aim settings, colorblind presets, audio visualization, and assistance for spell learning minigames. Arachnophobia mode was added after launch and replaces spider models and sounds with less realistic floating shapes, inspired partly by the roller-skated Bogart image from Prisoner of Azkaban. The enemies keep their combat behavior and difficulty. Their presentation changes, so the same caves can be entered without requiring one specific fear to be endured. The free summer update in June 2024 brought photo mode, talent resets, new cosmetics, broader access to Felix Felicis and the haunted Hogsmeade shop quest, and other additions. In January 2025, the PC version received official mod support, with an in-game manager and a creator kit distributed through Epic. Approved community creations can alter cosmetics, characters, environments, and more. A game about entering an old school eventually gave PC players official tools to rearrange parts of it themselves. Hogwarts Legacy became Warner Bros. Games' largest global launch at the time, selling more than 12 million copies and earning over $850 million in its first 2 weeks. It later finished 2023 as the best-selling game in the United States by dollar sales, breaking a long run dominated by Call of Duty and Rockstar releases. Those figures are unusually large for a single-player game without a recurring in-game store. Millions of separate students arrived at the same late sorting ceremony and then wandered away in different directions. The scale of that reception is difficult to picture, while one save remains very easy to picture. It begins with one face in a carriage, one house table, one room lit for the first night. Someone spends hours designing the room of requirement. Someone else barely moves a chair. One student refuses every curse. Another learns all three and then stops using them. A Hufflepuff sees Azkaban, a Ravenclaw lands on the tower roof, and 4 versions of the same story carry different house colors through the snow. The game sold in millions, but its central promise was always singular. This time, the person entering Hogwarts would be yours. By the time the school year ends, the castle no longer feels like the building seen from the carriage. The corridors have acquired personal landmarks. A staircase leads to the classroom, where Accio was first learned. A locked bathroom remembers a nervous search for demiguise moons. The Undercroft carries conversations that cannot be made innocent again. Far below everything, the map chamber waits in silence, its portrait still certain that secrecy is a form of safety. Outside the walls, the quieter places continue without an examination to prepare for. Mooncalves rise after dark. A train follows the valley. Shop windows in Hogsmeade remain lit, while snow settles on crooked roofs. Inside the room of requirement, cauldrons finish brewing, and a phoenix crosses a piece of sky, hidden behind one ordinary door. None of these things needs the student to hurry back. That may be the gentlest truth among all 200 facts. Hogwarts Legacy is full of battles, curses, repositories, and old disagreements, but the place stays memorable through details that ask for no victory. A pair laughs before opening the kitchen. A key flutters down a corridor. A hippogriff waits for a bow. Stars come into focus only after someone stands still long enough to align them. So the field guide can close for tonight. Its pages are safe. The last telescope has turned away from the stars, and the common room fires have settled into a low glow. Somewhere beyond the windows, the Black Lake moves against the shore, and the Forbidden Forest keeps its own hours. The castle has enough staircases to carry every remaining thought somewhere else, leaving this room quiet, while Hogwarts, old and patient, drifts toward morning.